Bay more business at the beginning of this one. Support for this podcast is brought to you by Market Squawk, powered by livesquawk.co.uk for all of your on-demand, low latency data needs for anything financial. Market Squawk, brought to you by livesquawk.co.uk. Exactly. It's all about business right now. Where were we when we none? Where were we when we ended? It was like Liston, weren't it, last time?
I think we were just about to kick off with the greatest.
Yeah. So just to run through, so we went through John O'Sullivan all the way up to Sonny Liston last time. There's a lot of these boys. There's 44 of them to be precise. Some of them get a lot of info, some of them don't. And to be fair, with the last half, that's the same. There's a few on this list that are like 3 lines of chat, move on. You know, there's some people that, you know, heavyweight boxing is littered with these people that right time.
Sim
right
Rahman,
place.
we love you, but not much.
Not really. Let's be honest. His son is okay though, isn't he? Yeah. So Sonny Liston has claimed the crown. He defended it once, which was a rematch to Floyd Patterson, which he bludgeoned him as well. Then in comes a young Cassius Marcellus Clay at the time. Now, I want to let you go because you've been waiting for this since we started. He is adorned on your body. He is, you know, listen, per numbers,
there he is.
He is the greatest, right?
Yeah.
Per lineage, he is the greatest. He may not be your favorite, but numbers are the numbers, and he is.
It's also too, like, he transcends the sport. He really, like, people kind of batter that around, and I don't even think we will grasp 100% because the political times it was back then, we get it from our standpoint. Back then, when it's happening, when the civil rights movement is right in the midst of it all, like, literally to say, I'll face the firing squad before announcing my religion, huge. And like, he has some, like, everything about that. Oh man, I'm going to get emotional. Everything about that guy is just, he lived a million people's lives. If you were a hostage negotiator and you freed hostages, your life's work is that he did that, and he's a boxer. Like,
for Bence.
Yeah. With Saddam Hussein. Yeah, sure. Like, the things he achieved and accomplished and made people believe were possible till the day he died is like that's what makes him the greatest. And like, what he did in the ring is so incredible. The amount of times people thought he couldn't do it and he did it. And for that to be just a part of what makes him so great shows to me why he's the greatest. It's like, most people, it dates back to Ali in some way of what got them into boxing, you know?
For sure. And like, to be stated, look, you know, Sonny is a terrifying, like, savage. Like, he think like Tyson in the late 80s. You're talking like Deontay Wilder when he's crazy and shouting at you to this day. You're
like
talking
actual murderer.
Yeah, like actual murderer, as scary as it gets, as terrifying as a human as it can be. And then in comes this phenom, this 22-year-old kid, Olympic gold medalist, right? Like a superstar. And like, a lot of the stuff with him, so he was like under a US team Olympic development from like age 12. So they were helping him out with, you know, money and stuff like that. So you're essentially supposed to be a company man. But things are going so wrong now that you know, you've now decided to pick up the Islamic faith. You've changed your name to Muhammad Ali. It is a real problem, and he's gone through an awakening at the same time as sort of becoming what he is, which is the most like phenomenal thing. So not only is he in the press conferences and everything to do with it, like it's just Bance. Like, he's absolutely leveling. He
rocked up at his house with a megaphone,
exactly,
just screaming at him, "Fight me!" Blah blah blah. And it's like, he said later, he's like, "What do you do to a legitimate crazy person? You just have to act crazy." Yeah. And that's the thing. Liston was a terrifying human. So Ali
was terrified of crazy people and terrified of needles, right? Two strange things, and normally the two go together.
Yeah. And but I mean, it got to the point Ali almost failed his medical. Like, his blood pressure was so high from all the screaming and ranting and raving. They're like, you need to tone this shit down a bit. But it worked
Absolutely.
a treat. He got to Liston.
Yeah, he did, and mixed with, you know, it also is a very different time, right? Having a handsome Olympic gold medalist, Larry, you know, heavyweight champion who's also black in very tense times, like that could have either been really good or really bad. It went down the route that he, you know, what solidified his whole life was like, you know, it's his way. Like, I'll do it this way or whatever. So the bout itself was like, I think he was a 7-1 underdog when he fought Liston. They expected him to basically get annihilated by this killer who, from all accounts, he trained for a 4-round fight. Liston was so sure that he was going to batter this kid that 4 rounds, that's all he had in the tank. And that's all he ever wanted to have. And that was it. And so
that's all he needed.
I think you could probably one-man show that fight, can't you?
Yeah, we can react it. We'll put that on the Patreon.
Yes. But yeah, everything that you've seen that is the iconic images of Ali, he done in that fight. You know, the fast feet, fast hands, stunning combinations, amazing movement, elusive, everything that you could possibly tick off. And he was beating the fuck out of him. And then there's a little bit of like sensationalism, maybe a little bit of drama. Also, you know, Sonny Liston was a devout mob man, so could 100% be true. Always provide that they put something on Liston's gloves.
For his eye. And you can see, to be fair, in the footage, like Ali reacting in a way, and shows what a champion is. He goes back to the corner, and what a great coach Dundee was. He's like, listen, fucking get back out there.
Cover up and go.
Yeah.
His eye cleared. He could start to see again, and then he stops Liston. Bad. The greatest is born. He has probably one of the most out there victory chats of all time. Just the most hype ever in it. Like, it just is.
The best. Yeah. Like, there will never be a better one. I am the great. Oh, man.
There you go. He actually rematched Liston as well. I know this is lineal, but like, he did rematch him. And in that one, from all accounts, he was ready to go the full 15. And then something strange just happened.
Yep. Good old anchor punch. I love Ali's explanation of it. It's like everyone just blinked at the same time, so no one actually saw the punch.
Makes sense. So Ali is now the lineal heavyweight champion for the first time. He is everything that you would expect a heavyweight champion to be. Probably the reason that we expect a heavyweight champion to be of this size. It makes no doubt. Like, you know, all of them have a certain level of like star power to them. Some of them are reluctant with it. Some of them completely embrace it, and others they just become something
born
else.
For it.
Yeah, and they literally just blossom in this.
He had poetry. I mean, the things rapping. That he.
You know, one of the wildest things is the reporter said to him like all the bettors, like all the bookmakers have got you like underdog. You know, and he whips out a little lyric, and it's like, if you want to lose your money, bet on Sonny. Like, just Sonny, boss.
Yeah,
like the level of smarts you have to just be able to whip out like a rhyming slam. Epic. So,
and Guinness World Record for shortest poem, because he was giving a speech and he just said me, we, and I think it was Norman Mailer or one of the boxing writers was like, that has a meaning. He's like saying we're all one. And he wrote to them, he said, listen, by definition of what a poem is, this is a poem. I'd like to put this forward. And they're like, yep. So he's got a
record,
another little feather in the cap.
So it would be very easy. And we always said at the 500,000 download mark, we'll do an Ali history episode, right? I believe things are cruising around the early 2s at the minute. So we're a while away. Also, thank you to the near 200 new subs on YouTube. Thank you for the listeners. The numbers are all popping up. Shout out to the crew, and let's continue to grow until we don't care anymore.
Can fight Jake Paul.
Or one. What's that other one that I don't like? The Weller kid. He fucks
me
off. Yeah, I'm not a fan. Anyway, Mo defends 9 times at a time where he's pretty strongly chilling with Malcolm X. He's with Elijah Muhammad. I'm sure there's another name in there, but I can't remember it. But things are getting tense. Vietnam's about to break out. or it's already in the early throes of it. You've got absolute racial civil unrest. You have the heavyweight champion of the world who is denouncing his quote unquote slave and Christian name in favor of his now Islamic name. And it's going down like a shit sandwich, to be honest. People aren't enjoying it, but he's a phenomenal fighter. And they probably put him in a very similar situation to like a Floyd, where at this point we're just pushing you out there to lose. And it didn't look like it was going to happen. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, at this point, a draft is called and he refuses the draft for the Vietnam War under the premise of why would I fight for you? I saw one interview where he broke down the amount of military equipment that he has personally bought with his income tax from his fights. It was serious. It was like, I actually bought you lot 5 tanks, 3 planes, and like 4 battalions of soldiers to go and fight these Viet Congs. Nothing to do with me.
So, I mean, the thing with that, he wasn't eligible for the first round of the draft because he got under the intelligence score or whatever they needed. And then obviously, I mean, really, why would you answer those questions coherently? You'd just be like, yeah, no, don't say me. But so they lowered it the next time round, and they're like,
I'd be shaving my palms with sandpaper to make them look like another disorder.
And they're like, you're good to go, son. And look, the quote is worth just hearing in its own words. So rather than us like doing a N-word, whatever, to listen to Ali say the quote, because it's so powerful about no Viet Cong ever called him names that he gets called in his own country, what he's saying and what he stood for, and what later became the stance of everybody. Like, you fast forward years, he was a revolutionary. At the time, he was the most hated person. He was a draft dodger. He's this, he's that. He shared a belief that later everyone would kind of share. So that's power. Also, too, like if we just rewind a bit with his gold medal, he allegedly threw that medal into the river because they would let him in, but they wouldn't let one of his black friends in because he was black. And he's like, I'm not having this shit. Like, I just fought for this country and you won't give me the rights I deserve. People have said, that didn't happen. He just lost it. I mean, to say it may not have happened, but to just say he wouldn't do that. The man said he'd go in firing squad. Like, he's down for his beliefs. So, incredible guy. And this is
a
one
man
of
of principle.
100%.
A true global star, like a level of stardom that I don't think anyone can ever, you know, you're not talking about Bieber fame. You're not talking about like insert any child. BTS, I think, are quite a big Korean boy band as per the kids. And
this is the time before social. This is when you actually had to do something to be famous. And people around the world had to like see you on television and shit, like read about you in a newspaper.
So they, at this point, before we do descend into just making this a Moep, which we're not going to do, I'm going to press the brakes on this one. Because we got still
2 more times of him.
Exactly. He gets his license revoked. So he's now no longer allowed to fight, which the tragedy of that in itself is those probably would have been his peak years. In the, 2 or 3 years he was denied a license?
3 years.
3 years. Apparently he didn't even step foot in the gym. Like, he was making do in other ways, and he wasn't training at all. Now that's tragic, and that's something that you never, and that's part of the mystique and part of the fantasy, because what we saw was out of control. Yep. Even to the end, like, there's no one tougher. There's no one, more resilient. There's no one that wanted it more. There's a fierce compare. But yeah, he
never been stopped.
No, I mean, probably should have been.
Yeah.
A few times. So at this point, in comes another gold medalist. Smoking Joe Frazier. Who, on this list, to be fair, is one of my favorites. Like, the ones that are the most interesting to me are Frazier, Mora, obviously Tyson, because he's just very interesting. And, I find Briggs very interesting as well.
The cannon, we need him on.
I know. Like, it's just bizarre that you'll be having a chat about him in his peak in 1997-ish, and that's a long time ago, and he's still giving it large now. But yeah, Smoking Joe, another gold medalist. Now, he was not considered. He wasn't like Ali. He, came up doing farming. He moved to Philly. He lived that rough life. The films of like the beating up the bodies in the abattoir in Rocky. Frazier used to do that because he used to work in the slaughterhouse. It's like a lot of Philly folklore has come from Smoking Joe himself, including the legendary film that we all love. Listen, if you haven't seen all Rockies, I told you, you can't
do something with your life, man.
You're out. Like, I need you to know intimate details about Rocky 5 for me to, like, otherwise I just can't trust you.
Yeah.
I'm not
if you
signing
haven't
a form.
wanted to run down the beach with your mate in a crop top and hug at the end, come on, mate. Now.
When you're a child and you are running at the beach, if it's not on the break of the waves like Rocky and Apollo, you're not doing it right. That's exactly how it works. So Smoking Joe comes in. He beats who is it? Ellis for the then vacant title. Smoking Joe was this squat, like power punching, relentless pressure fighter who just like he just was an amazing fighter. And
his hook was born in the deepest depths of hell.
Yes, for 100%. And again,
and for his size, but
he wasn't that small. He was just under 6 foot, right? He's not like that small. But yeah, he was proper.
He's under like everyone. Like he said when he fought Ali, every time he'd breathe on top of my head. That's where I lived, just on his chest.
He was a phenomenal fighter, and the rivalry between him and Ali is the most famous rivalry. I don't think it's very unlikely that we will see another rivalry. People can talk about Wilder and Fury. It's not the same. People can talk about even the Mexicans, Morales and Barrera. It's
historic relevance also comes into, and the Smoking Joe has an amazing documentary about him.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone listening, make sure you check it out. It is sad how he almost ended up penniless, but when he passed, he was pretty much penniless. And there was a statue made of Rocky in Philly, but not one of him. So like an idyllic boxer rather than the actual boxer. The things he do.
They don't do the best job with those statues though. That Evander Holyfield one looks like Michael Jordan with very wide shoulders. Like it doesn't look like Evander at all.
Yeah, a little bit wonk. But he was keeping Ali afloat while he was out of the ring. Like he was like, in order for me to be champion, I need to beat the champion. So he was giving Ali money, which is great, which we'll get to later on.
Which love.
Yeah.
That love.
Which really sparked the rivalry later down the line. But incredible guy, incredible fighter, man.
I mean, like even during that period, Ali would do annoying things to Joe in public to make fuss, to the point like Frazier's just not that guy. In his book at the minute, like, he's going through a bit where he wanted to beat him with a tire iron. Like that's how annoyed he was with Ali, right? And like even more incensing is that after these vicious press conferences, he like comes and gives him a little pat on the wrist. He's like, "I'm just putting money in both of our pockets. It's all good. It's all fine." And it's just like, some people just don't work that way. You know? Some people
exactly.
And that's the problem, right? So
it's like Jake Paul and Nate Diaz. They're coming at it from two very different
places.
Perspectives.
Yeah, very different places. And one of them doesn't move on. But the pair of them, without each other, they're not the same. Like Ali is Ali, but he's not the same.
For the better and the worse.
For the better and the worse, for sure. So they fight in what is the fight of the century as it's billed. So you have the unbeaten champion who has had his license taken away. Now he's back against the current reigning champion. And it's a row.
Oh, mate. Do you know, I think I told this story on the pod already, but that rich man club that I used to work at, one of the old boys brought in an untorn ticket from that fight. And because he went in with like fucking Fred Astaire or one of them big gold singer types.
Yeah.
He went in with him so they didn't tear his ticket, and he's got that. And I was just like, oh, I wonder what would happen if you slipped on the treadmill and I just pocketed it. That would be worth a fortune. But also just having that is insane.
I mean, obviously, let's talk offline about addresses and such. I think, listen, It can be one of those ones where you have it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I have it Tuesday and Thursday, and every other time, like Sunday, we do it that way.
I like the shared custody.
Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So look, Ali and Frazier fight for the first time. It is
two lineal champs, two undefeated champs, two Olympic gold medal. Like, it don't get bigger.
It doesn't. And again, it's something that we'll probably struggle to see in that way with that level, as well as, you know, Muhammad is now fully Muhammad. Anyone calling him Muhammad, it's offensive and it's a real problem. And you're doing
and gets beat down in the ring
bad.
With him yelling, "Say my name" in your face.
Bad. But like, even like Howard Cosell was having problems at the beginning, remembering not to call him Cassius. And, you know,
yeah.
But that's all being fueled up as that goes along, which is then because Joe's just like Joe, right? He's out of this. He's just a Christian boy from the Carolinas who's moved in.
Yeah.
He don't need this. So Muhammad, he's calling him an Uncle Tom. He's making all manner of vicious, just properly chatting. In that fight, it is pretty much what they did for the other fights at various levels, with Joe landing in the 15th round, a hellacious left hook, dropping him, nicking the decision.
Like that hook, like Fury against Wilder.
How did he get up?
Like,
not even lose consciousness. Yeah.
I mean, Ali, the beard on him, holy fuck. Like, down and with it. Like, the second he hit the just with it.
Yeah, and it was a face get up as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. What a beautiful shot, though. Oh, fuck.
So then in comes the Frazier era. Now, Joe defends 4 times. During this time, there's the emergence of Big George Foreman, who is another Olympian, a classic. He's a Sonny Liston type. He's giant. He's terrifying. He's surly. He's a knockout artist. He's banging people out left and right, and including in this time after Ali had fought Ken Norton twice. One of them broke his jaw and beat him. The other one, he nicked a very thin decision.
Yeah.
Foreman came out and went, cool story, destroys him, destroys everyone, including Joe Frazier. Knocks him down 3 times bad in the first round, 3 times bad in the second round, and that is it. Done.
Yeah.
Wasn't even like it was just bruised, wasn't it? It was just like, oh, what was this?
And also to think, without fast forwarding too much to what happens then, going against the guy when a guy beat you, and then all the marbles are on the table, and you have to fight the guy that not just beat him but destroyed him, and then to come out on top of that, that's insane. Like Frazier is like, that era of boxing is so hard to fathom how good they all were. And Frazier
no one did that to Frazier.
No, fucking hell, 6 times in 2 rounds. It knocked him off the canvas.
Yeah. Do you think that Foreman's probably the biggest heavyweight hitter that we've had? Because I don't think it's like pure shock force, but it's just like everything everything that he does.
Yeah.
It's just nothing. Even the short, soft ones are just. I think he might be, you know.
Yeah, for sure. They said Shavers hit like a fucking Mack truck, Ron Lyle as well. But Foreman's name always gets brought up as like.
It's just these hands.
Yeah.
His hands are like those like massive, like cans of soup. you like the big ones, you know, like the school dinner ones. Filth. So Foreman is this troubled, angry, kind of surly villain that's now world champion, and he's the most terrifying man out there by a long way. Muhammad has won the title, lost the title, come back, had some bad fights. Like that Norton fight, like literally got his head broken, and that was in the first round, and he fought all the way to the end. Now he's put himself in a position to fight George Foreman for the title in Zaire. I believe it's a very famous fight called the Rumble in the Jungle. There's no less than 1,800 documentaries about it, which is a bit of a piss take because When We Were Kings is so good. You don't really need more than that. Yeah. So they fight.
And if you haven't seen When We Were Kings, I mean, yeah, it's the one time you cannot listen to us. Press pause, go watch it. Actually, don't listen to the rest of this, then watch it.
Yeah, or maybe just do both at once. But you're dealing with now someone who has been a star since his early 20s. He's now in his early 30s. We've seen him on his arse. We've seen him badly hurt. We've seen him lose. We've seen him win. You know, you've seen someone evolve while George is still that young first wave crusher. And they are, listen, there's not a single person that had Ali winning that. Like everyone thought he was going to get obliterated to the point
in his own corner, they were talking like he was going to die. Like he had to hype his corner up.
I mean, like, because in When We Were Kings, they're showing Foreman banging an old school punch bag, which is sand, and splitting it. And you're like, what?
Leaving dents in it.
Yeah, like the noise coming out of the bag is a wince. It's not a smack. It's a wild. So, do you want to run us through that fight?
So, and big shout out to George Kambosos for bringing mention of this back up, because what Ali tried to do was make him feel the right hand. So Ali was known for his jab. He was known for his moving. He kept talking about how he was dancing and how he was going to move and all this sort of stuff, which you'd expect from Ali. And you can see him just like, there's a new plan. He just starts going to that right hand lead, not off the jab. You got to be quick to fucking do that. And it's like an insult almost to just throw it without the jab. And I love in When We Were Kings, they say you can just see the look in his eye when he realized he's hitting with the best he's got. And it doesn't, like, the right hand, that's the money. And they're just bouncing off Foreman. And so people are then getting worried. They think Ali's getting worried, and he goes into the corner and like looks inside himself. We need a new plan here. And, you know, because he said he was going to dance, people thought it was a fix.
Yep.
But the mental strength, and like you said, a bag is getting almost punched off the fucking ceiling when your game plan becomes, I'm going to stand here and take his punishment until he gets tired against one of the most feared punchers in history.
Yeah.
Fuck me. The rope-a-dope is born.
But the intelligence, that shows the intelligence of him as a fighter and him as a person.
And self-belief.
He's not failing that military test.
No, exactly.
By accident, you know what I mean? So,
because that backfires badly. If you don't get the chance to come out the winning end of that, that just looks like,
huge. And you can't tell me that fight didn't have an effect on the rest of his life, because for sure it did. But he knew that Foreman had not gone more than 2 to 4 rounds for a very long time. So he knew that the big man probably was going to burn out. So he was grabbing onto him. He was pulling on the back of his neck. He was hanging onto his arms.
Talking in his ear
bad. Every time he would land a couple of shots that he could actually grab a hold of just that little bit, just so George would have to pull it that little bit more. Like, all of these things sound like he's made it up after the fact, but no, he's genuinely doing it.
And there's the video, you can see it. And I love the bit with George where they interview him later. And he's like, he just kept saying to me, is that all you got, George? Is that the best you got? And it got to the point where I was thinking, this is the best I got. Like, God damn it.
He did gas. And
how can you not?
Muhammad got his chance. He really did. And finished the job. Again, he has, 3 of the most iconic pictures in boxing. You have the one of him giving the lean back to Frazier's hook. You have the one second time over Sonny Liston saying, get the fuck up.
Huge. Yep.
And then you have that one from the sky out with, True G, the GOAT, without a doubt.
And like, I mean, we will spend, if you let us get carried away, but the things going on just in that, they're executing people under the ring that they fight on. They're taking in all the criminals, executing them, and sending out of every 3, sending the other 2 out.
Also, as far as I remember from the Don King ep that we did, The Fallen Dictator, that was his first fight that he promoted properly, like his first world title or something wild, weren't it? And it was just like, all right, starting big there, when we were Donald.
Yeah, even the music, you got James Brown there, you got all this shit going on. The amount of stuff going on, it almost didn't happen. Yeah. Frazier, Foreman got cut. Ali won fight. Frazier again. Just everything iconic. And then the weather held up just for him to win. Mm-hmm. Then the skies opened up and everyone was celebrating. Magical. And that song, Power, in the Ali movie. The
Ali, Bombay.
No, the tomorrow.
Which one?
You know, the
sing
tomorrow.
No, sing to me.
We'll put it on the
on the page.
That's
on the OnlyFans, that one. But look, I want to say this back to what we were saying first time around. You're talking about the mid-70s, where Ali is as famous as anyone to have ever lived in the Congo, then Zaire. Okay, that's a place that doesn't have electric. It doesn't. Majority doesn't have running water. They have cities, sort of. It is
rocking up with a new bird as well. Like everyone's taking photos. It's like, yeah, it's this one. The wife's at home. Don't worry about that.
Don't worry about it. This is fun. It's fine. I'm here now. Like it's rude not to, bro. But that's a mega star. Then that shows you like the power and the reach of how he was. You know, you're in a third world nation and you are as known as anyone without a means of them knowing. Maybe they had a bit of radio. Maybe there's been a TV when they've gone to see something somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, it's not wild. Anyway, please.
And greatest punch never thrown, they say. They say it shows what Ali was, how he just turns with Foreman as he's going down with his hand cocked and just doesn't throw it. Hands go, it's magic. Like, if you can watch that and just not get goosebumps, you need to get your pulse checked, man, because and that's a guy that destroyed Frazier. That's what you need to keep in mind.
Yep.
Fuck me.
But this is why that whole, like, it's mainly MMA more than boxing, and the old MMA math thing. It's why it doesn't tie up. So we now have Ali as the two-time lineal champ, the second two-time lineal champ, which, listen, Patterson did it with some Swedish geezer who knocked him out cold, and then he avenged it. It's not the same.
No.
But he is the second two-time lineal champ. Now, Ali at this point, on top of the 9 that he defended first time, the second time he does another 10. That's 19. It's not bad. Decent innings in it. So he defends it 10 times and then comes up against Leon Spinks. Now, listen, fantastic fighter, etc., etc., etc. Anytime you're missing front teeth, I question everything. You could be the smartest man ever. You could be from the future telling me my future. If you're missing a front tooth, I'm not listening. I just can't. Like, even a gold one. Even like put a bit of cardboard in it, something like.
And if you're missing the pair, it doesn't bode well.
God, it was just so cracky, wasn't it? So Leon beats him
6-0-1.
Is that what he was?
6-0-1 going into the Ali fight. That's how many fights he's had.
How do you fight Ali at that point? You know what I mean? Like, how does that happen? So he turns over the boss. The boss comes back, wins it for a third time. Only one to win it for a third time. There's 5 of them that have won it twice. He's the only one to win it 3 times.
Also, a little bit of Spinks trivia, because Michael, who we'll get to in Tyson era, also won gold at the exact same Olympics as a middleweight. So
yeah, that was all part of the same. That was like the big year, weren't it? The Spinks.
Yeah, but brothers winning golds at the same Olympics is power. That's double power.
Are you spelling that UVAH or ER?
All of it.
All of it.
Exclamations too.
So look, Muhammad has won for the third time. He has a short retirement.
Only man in history.
Short retirement. And in this short retirement, Larry Holmes is in about and wrecking shop. Now, he's got to be, it's like him and Lennox are the 2 most underappreciated heavyweight champions ever. And it's not, I don't know what Lennox has done or who is pissed off, but he really is, right?
I really believe it's the exact same thing. And it was the same as following Dempsey.
Yep.
It's just like when there is that superstar, and you're the next guy, it doesn't matter how good you are, you don't get that love. And Holmes was probably the worst of it because, my God, that jab, a Larry Holmes
one
jab,
of the best ever,
was a masterpiece.
Yeah,
and I cannot watch his fight versus Ali start to finish without like a child watching a horror movie, like doing this. Like, I can't. It's painful to watch. Holmes was his sparring partner. You know, he's in tears at the end of the fight, saying, "I'm sorry, champ." And Ali's like, "You're so sorry. Why'd you do that to me?"
The thing is, as well, is that Parkinson's had already kicked in at that
Big
point,
time.
and they was using some pretty wild drugs just to get him to look physically in shape, like water-shedding pills, which obviously doesn't help when you're about to go and have a fight where your brain sloshes around. It's, you know,
I mean, Ferdy Pacheco left him as his doctor because he wouldn't pass the medical test, which was touching his own nose. He couldn't touch his nose. There was significant malalignment, they said, when he was trying to touch his. It's like, how are you letting the guy get in the ring?
Because they want that cash. Don King. Always Don King, as we found out. So look, listen, Larry is one of the most underrated heavies. Now, it would be an injustice and unfair for us to not do an ep with him. I've reached out to him a couple of times. He does do pods, and I think it's going to be a matter of time before we probably get Larry on. Larry batters Muhammad with Angelo Dundee in the very famous "I'm the chief second, I'm stopping this fight." With the ref that was just willing to, like, he argued with him, and he's like, "No, I'm stopping this, bro. Like, this is done." Larry rules the roost for a very long time. I think it was 22 defenses total or 21 total, but he had 12 lineal because he was already a champion that just wasn't the lineal champ. So this happens a lot more in the modern era than it did before. So, you know, we're coming into the 4-belt era. It's 3 at the minute. It's WBA, WBC, IBF, and the ring belt. Right. The WBO does exist. People are winning it at you know, a little bit 5-10 years later. It's kind of like how the IBO is now, I guess, is the fairest way. Because like Tommy Morrison was WBO champ, weren't he? And he's just like, he's counted as a world champion. A few of them are WBO champs, and it's just like, it just wasn't a main one. You're not holding shit up with that one. But
and he beat Spinks and Ali back to back, so that's 2 lineal champs he beat in a row.
But then he comes in against Michael Spinks, brother, and he wins a very, very tight, controversial decision over him, but he does become the lineal champ. He vacates the IBF, and I think he vacates the WBA, and this era is when a young Mike Tyson is coming in. Now, Tyson is tearing through things. Spinks at this point is the lineal champ. Michael, as we will call him, is the WBC, WBA, and IBF champion. He is the unified, considered to be the number one. And then you have Mr. Spinks, who's I think 37-0 at this point, who is the lineal champ. So they make that fight. And it's probably the most perfect Mike, right? It's the most perfect Tyson. That Tyson that just tore through him there, that's probably the best we would have ever got. It's
the most terrifying Tyson to have in the ring with you. Like, we didn't get to see much of him that night, but
that was the one. That Tyson there is indestructible. That's got the lineage of Cuss. He's got Kevin Rooney in his corner still, which
he's got the rage of the shit outside the ring going, but on top of it.
Yeah, just on top of it, but also just on top of people around him that are training him and care for him and are actually making him what he should be whilst Don is on the scene, but they've got him at bay. So Mike absolutely and utterly destroys Spinks. Like, bad. There's a million stories that we went over on the first part of the Mike Tyson one, punching holes in the walls, getting annoyed by that swagged out manager of Spinks, Butch, the geezer who used to wear the bow tie with no shirt. Absolute champion. And then Mike becomes lineal as well as undisputed. Like the heavyweight champ, like undeniable. He is fine.
And this, I mean, so he debuts in 85.
Yep.
Reels off 15 fucking fights, obviously all wins.
Yep.
In 86, 13 fights. then we start seeing a bit of a pattern. It's 4 in 87, 3 in 88, 2 in 89, 3 in 90, and then we know what happens after that. But he beats Burbick 86. He beats Bone Crusher Smith for 87 for the WBA, Tucker for the IBF in 87, and we're at Spinks for the Lineal in 88. This is what, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3 years after debuting.
Yep. Listen, I mean, obviously we're going to now go into Tyson and Douglas, which is where we stopped part 1 of our I was going to say Michael Jackson. How dare I? Tyson episode. But it should be said that, you know, this is a 23-year-old Tyson at that time. 23. So there's a lot of talk.
Think what you were doing with your life at 20. Some of you listening probably aren't even 23 yet, but
23, you know,
ruling the fucking world. When we talk about the star power of Ali, this is a kid at a young age who's getting there. You know, like he was everywhere. He's on billboards in Japan, fucking all over the place.
He's in a penthouse with 12 Japanese girls and Bobby Brown the night before the Buster Douglas fight. Listen, that version of Mike that fought Spinks that night, you put him in with any heavyweight in ever, and you know, you don't doubt. There's not a heavyweight out there that I doubt that he couldn't have beaten in that phase. So, you know, like, obviously we're haters, there's a bunch of stuff, right? So there's always haters that will always say, you know, Buster exposed Mike for what he was. He put Mike through the first lot of adversity and he failed and all this other stuff. I don't really buy that, because coming up,
Mike lost to Mike before he lost to anybody else. And just like you said with Ali, the saddest thing about both of them, considering how fucking great they are, is that we miss the chunk of them of their true greatness. And like, however, Tyson, even though we didn't see the years, that's an offsetted amount of time for he was out of it way before that. Before he physically got taken out of the game, he was mentally out of the game.
Long gone. Long gone. And you are talking about a global superstar. Pepsi, Reebok, Nintendo, like he's got his own computer game. He is a star of the highest order. No one can match that. Of course, at 23, with someone that's likely going to just give you the coke instead of saying, "Wait, you're a professional athlete. Maybe don't do the blizz, eh?" You know, and those people that were opposing that were taken out of his life, and that, you know.
Oh, how terrifying is that photo where his eyes are bloodshot red as fuck, and he's just got all the coke on his face, like that.
Yeah, I thought he was trying to do a bit of Bake Off that day.
Other than the Spinks, that version of Tyson is not one you want to. Yeah.
That was the start of a dark time. But yes, that was probably the worst of the fully developed Tyson that you'll ever see. He had no corner. He
had an unprepared corner that had stuff that he's allergic to.
Yes, they didn't have an end swell, which is the piece of metal that removes the swelling. So what they did is they filled a latex glove that he's allergic to with ice. Oh, is it a condom? Was it?
Yeah,
I thought it was a glove at least.
They had a condom. They had a glove and a condom.
Perfect. Why not?
Yeah,
I mean that does the job. That. So what you have now is Buster Douglas, who was always a very widely regarded, talented heavyweight fighter. He was, I think I've got it in my notes here. He was ranked number 4 with the WBA, number 3 with the WBC, and number 2 with the IBF at this time of fighting Tyson.
Yeah.
That's sort of, you know, that's like a Dillian level fighter.
Yeah.
Right now in the modern era.
Yeah, going into the Tyson fight, he's 28-4-1. So yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah, a Dillian-esque fighter. Like you know that they can be a world champion at any time. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
His mum died 20 days before the fight, and it put the power of shape-shifting Jesus all up in him. So what you had was
was the thing. That was the difference between him and like a Dillian. Was Buster just mentally often didn't have, like, he just wouldn't turn up. You know, he was notoriously not the most dedicated person with his training, shall we say. And none of that was the case for this. Like, people thought Tyson was just going in for his normal 1-round massacre. Douglas, you know, was going to be the normal, like, not mentally there. That was an animal in there.
That it was. And, you know, he's double and triple jabbing. He's ripping vicious, short, sharp shots. He's every time that Tyson would tie him up, he would whack him with an uppercut. And even then, even with this hungover, barely mic, he still kind of did stop Douglas. That is a long count. Like in the moment, you don't really know it, but he dropped him heavy, I think round 8.
Yep.
And the very end of the round, dropped him with a vicious uppercut, put him flat on his ass. He had about 11, 12 seconds. He had an extra little bit. Now, the 9th round, he did what we expected Tyson to do, which is that he came out and just fucking battered Tyson. Like, bad. Just was ripping him up. And then 10th, carried it on and stopped him.
I hate watching because it's Tyson on the receiving end, but what a beautiful that uppercut sets things up, the mouth guard going out. And what a fucking warrior is Tyson in that state, still reaching for his mouth guard to be like, I'm all right. Like, I can keep going.
There you go. And there you have Buster Douglas is the most famous of a one-hit wonder-esque character.
Oh, sure. Sports. And biggest upset, like that was the biggest upset. Yeah.
Biggest upset in sport. I don't think there's not a bigger upset.
No. ESPN 30 for 30 on them is incredible too. That's a great little doco. The 30 for 30 series is really good. And the one on them is great.
That's called 42 and 1, isn't it, or something?
Yeah.
Power. Proper power. So look, whilst Buster was 4, 3, and 2 in the rankings, there was a 1, 1, 1 in the rankings, which was Evander Holyfield.
The real deal.
The real deal himself. Ex-cruiserweight, undisputed champ, up at heavyweight, giving it large.
Chiseled from granite.
Huge. He is Buster's first fight, first defense.
Unlucky first defense to have.
Gross. Just irons Buster. Like, just knocks him out. Like,
and Buster came in the sort of shape that you're a bit more accustomed to him being in.
Yeah, it just wasn't there. Like, that's probably the worst thing to ever happen to Buster Douglas was winning that fight. You know, it's...
Yeah.
But how do you come back from that? That's insane. But yeah, Evander, I think it's like round 2. Like, it's an early stoppage. And he just batters him. Now, during this time, there's another champion called... Well, another champion, a contender to the championship. It was Riddick Bowe. Huge Big Daddy American fighter who tried to almost fight in a celeb boxing match very recently. Lennox Lewis beat him in the Olympics that year. So Lennox got the gold, Bowe got the silver.
Hell of a fighter. Another one that doesn't get the credit.
No, he's not. He's a great fighter as well. So so in this era, it switches around a decent amount.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty, I mean, it's a strong, like the 80s is a medium era for the heavyweights. 70s, wild. 80s, towards then the 90s is bananas. Like Tommy Morrison doesn't get the respect he deserves.
Yeah.
But he was a wild heavyweight in the 90s. Like, love to see some of their blood work. You know, some of them boys are juiced. Boy, Evander, like Evander's on some stuff. Right?
Well, remember when can't believe I've gone blank on his name, but that doctor that supplied all the rappers and all the athletes, Conte, they had matching Evander's address, the client Evan Fields. It's like, you barely tried, man. You barely tried to hide that.
I like that guy went to prison and he worked out the daily cost of sending him to that prison and then like laughed about it on a Rogan episode. Like, Conte is kind of a G. So look, Evander loses to Big Daddy Bowe.
What a fucking fight.
It's a savage fight.
Guys, watch all 3 of them fights. Holy fuck.
It's an absolute savage fight. And like, I don't know how, if Evander was Bowe's size, that's Bowe's done. Right? The difference, because Evander was a small heavy comparatively to, like, this is the start of the big boys as well. Like, you had a few in the early days, the Primos and the Willards and stuff like that, 6'6".
Yeah, but this is also when they're able to use that size. Like, they know how to box now.
big boys and big boys in the modern era that have got long amateur careers as well as now they're big fights. So yeah, Big Daddy
Those
fight.
fights could have happened in a phone box. And probably should have,
Yeah.
because it would have stopped fucking people parachuting in and fucking up the fights.
It's interesting you bring that up because now in the rematch, that was the massive fan man.
Yeah.
Now, in the history of silly idea, like I don't understand what he was ever trying to do. I vividly remember
How did he
watching
get all that
that.
shit in?
It was an open air stadium, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But I don't understand. Like, what did he want to do?
I think mission achieved.
I mean, because if he wanted to go into the ring, it's a terrible idea because you have two enormous professional fighters
Swinging punches.
and you're just a guy in a suit with a fucking fan. You jar. So that fight was a slightly different affair. It started out big. Fan man fans in, and recently that a tennis player had been stabbed, right? Someone jumped into the crowd and stabbed
that's
the
right.
tennis player. So that's why they was all
That's why
like,
they start filling him in.
they grabbed this geezer. If anyone, like sometimes if you are having a bad day, if you like YouTube Extinction Rebellion Canning Town, it was like that. There was this one geezer on the Extinction Rebellion marches who was in tweed, tweed and cords, and he's standing on top of the DLR at Canning Town, and they're like, mate, get off the fucking I'm going to try to get home and I fucking And he's just like, no, because the environment doesn't count. They literally grab this geezer by the legs, pull him to the floor, and they just fill him in. Now, this poor fan man, he got pulled by any means off of that ring. They were grabbing face, they were grabbing hair, they were grabbing eyes, nose, anything. Very strange, very, very strange. And that stopped the fight for 20 minutes. Imagine that fight stopping 20 minutes in the thick of it. It was like round 5 as well. It was like in the deep of it.
Yeah.
Comes back. Evander wins. Yeah? Okay. Now, the most interesting of the heavyweights on this list for me personally is Michael Moore. I find him fascinating, right? You have this, again, surly, limited capacity to speak, to answer questions. He doesn't want to be a fighter, but he was phenomenal. Like he turned pro in 1988 and he was a world champion at the end of 1988. Right? He's one of the best light heavyweights of all time. Just cruised out cruiser. No, I'm going straight up to heavyweight. Was fighting dudes like 80 pounds heavier than him. And like he was a good fighter and the first ever Southpaw heavyweight champion. Is Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore beat Evander in a very, very thin decision.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did win. It was very close. He got up off the canvas early and it was very close. And as with all of these ones that I find the most interesting, like they've got a weird chip on their shoulder. And I don't think you get a bigger one on this list than Michael Moore. So Michael Moore was originally trained by Emmanuel Stewart. Him and Manny split up. Then he ping-ponged around to trainers and ended up with the legendary Teddy Atlas. Him and Teddy did very well together. However, in the Evander fight, he was doing what Teddy does and was talking all of the stuff required to get his fighter through it. And then he became the star. And I think that fucked Michael off more than anything. Yeah. Bad. So in this very strange period where Tyson's in prison, Evander and Bo have knocked chunks out of each other, Michael Moore is the light heavyweight champion going up and fighting. Tommy Morrison's about, Ray Mercer's about. It's a big time. Big George Foreman's also about, and he's fighting away and he fights Evander, doesn't make a fucking mug of himself, does very, very well. He also fights Tommy Morrison, comes unstuck, probably Tommy's best ever performance. Was against,
it's worth saying he's been out of the ring for a decade. Like,
yeah, this is George Foreman from before, from Rumble in the Jungle. This is, 13, 14 years ago he was in, and now he's back. So Michael Moore, who has beaten Evander Holyfield, and he's in kind of a good place, but he's known for basically pushing people away, self-sabotaging, causing real problems, and that's what he's doing. And he's got the ump that Teddy is the star So you know what? He does the opposite of what Holmes does. George Foreman wants the fight. He's like, yeah, I'll destroy like the big man at that point, who is completely different. George Foreman he's selling hamburgers, he's selling Dunkin' Donuts, he's selling the George Foreman grill. He's gone back to boxing because he stopped fighting totally, became a preacher. All of his money got spent.
Also went into a big depression after Ali. Like,
of course he did.
He battered, what was it, 4 heavyweights or something in a night just to prove to himself that he could still do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's worth saying, long term, probably the best thing that ever happened to him was those years out. Because he had the career, like you said, he had the grill and mental faculties from taking 10 years off punches.
Yeah. I mean, like, but by the time that he was in his, mid-40s, he's 45 at the time. By the time that he's now calling up and is a big enough star for the boxing world as well as a celebrity for it to happen, which is a blessing in itself, because he didn't deserve the fight with Mora. Yeah. He had lost to Tommy Morrison 17 months before that. It had kind of been, you've had 2 shots now and it hasn't gone. I think he was getting checks for 10 to 15 million a month from the grill at this point, because he'd all signed up. Like, he's fine forever. I think George is worth something astonishing, like 600 mil. Just majority from the grill and endorsements. Like,
needs it for all them kids.
Exactly. And he's doing commentating. He's part of the HBO team. George and Larry are just quipping off each other and all this other stuff. But yeah.
He got so lovely in his older age too, didn't he? For such like a mean, terrifying.
Well, this is the interesting thing, isn't it? Because what he was is very similar to Mora. And Mora, I don't know what he's like now. I bet he's not that nice, Michael Mora. I don't think he had. He might have had like the Michael Mora fucking spatula or something, and it probably sold remarkably not good.
Like our OnlyFans feet pictures.
I think we should still try. I don't think we should stop. Anyway, listen. George looked every bit of 45 in that fight. Huge, right? He says he knows what he was doing. I don't doubt that. I don't not believe that. And parts of it looked like he knows what he was doing. But he was 9 rounds down at the point of this miracle Jesus
just
punch.
Had him in the cage. He was just in the cage.
Had it in the cage. Like, but he had been saying apparently he will stand in front of me and I will catch him. And he did. And it was the first shot that hurt him. He landed like on just above the eyebrow. And like he kind of held it together and then just went, oh, sick. Bam. And knocked out Michael Mora in the 10th round to become the oldest heavyweight champion and another 2-time lineal bad boy. It's a big, big sporting moment, that. Like, if you can watch that and see how much it means, because he looks up at the Jeebus, right? He gives him a little thank you very much. He's wearing the same shorts that he had on when he lost to Ali. Like,
just he modified,
more stretched out, weren't they? They're not really tailored. They're just girthed a little bit. Right. So George, top of the world, swans off. He's done. But he kind of fights Shannon. I think he defends a few times, actually. What we got? 3 times. 3 times. Yeah. And the 4th one is against Shannon the Cannon, Let's Go champ Briggs, who George beats, frankly. Let's be honest about that. It was a dirty decision. Yeah. It was at least 4 rounds up, weren't he? Like, Shannon wanted nothing to do with it. He felt a little bit of the power early on and went, I'm not being Michael Mora. Nah. Right? They gave it to Briggs. Briggs did nil defense because he immediately just went up against Lennox in a very fun fight.
It was fun. Probably not so much for him, but it was.
It was a very entertaining. Yeah, it's an entertaining heavyweight clash, right? And this is Shannon, where he's got like mid-bank level like dreads that are blonde, and Lennox is not the lion that he become. Like, listen, Lennox beats Briggs, stops him.
Bad. Fuck me. Some of them punches that land, but it was a great tear up.
It was a good tear. I think that was one of them things. It's like, look, Briggs was a good boxer and he became much better as his career went on, but Lennox was always going to be better. Yeah. So you only can fight him in that.
Yeah, you can't take a time machine to any point where Lennox doesn't win.
No, exactly. So Lennox stops him. Lennox rules. Rules. 6 lineal defenses. He is the last undisputed heavyweight champion. There hasn't been one since, right? Yep. And he was only undisputed for 3 days? It was not very long, was it? But he was undisputed.
Like, of all the names we've said, Lennox really is up there with the heavies. Like,
I put Lennox against anyone.
Yeah, his defeats are just shock defeats, really. Like McCall, no one saw that coming, immediately rectified. Rahman, which we'll get to in a sec.
Yep.
No one saw that. If you said, no, you didn't.
The only person that had cash on it was Rahman's trainer.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
And the South African promoter, who's the most hideous man ever. But to be fair, you did just touch on that. Like, during that era where Mora became champion, Lennox had just been wiped out by Oliver McCall. Like, he had just been like the heir apparent to the heavyweight division, which is what he was, because it was like, he wasn't quite Canadian, he wasn't quite English. He's a great one to do a whole episode on, right? He wasn't really accepted by either side, but more us, but the Canadians wanted it. And he just never really got the love that he deserved. And then he gets stopped by some, a good fighter nonetheless, but someone that shouldn't be stopping him. That, again, halts the division. So you got Lewis, who's the AJ of that era, just been blown out. You got the two, wily warriors, let's say Fury and Wilder. They're fighting each other, knocking chunks of each other. And then in comes anyone. Andy Ruiz has popped up. Joe Parker has popped up. All these other ones have just come in because they can. Right. So Lennox runs for a bit. Then Lennox gets famous, doesn't he? Like, famous. Appearing in R. Kelly videos, feeling on your booty, giving it this in the background. Massive. He was in Ocean's 11.
It's worth noting. McCall proper had a breakdown in their rematch too. Like, it's weird to see Amanda straight up cry, but that happens.
He cried on his way in the ring, and then he cried during the fight, and then he just started holding his face and walking around the ring until the ref was like, no. Yeah,
we're getting into the era where weird shit started, because we got Andrew Gallotta kicking about too, and that's always a toss whether it's going to end or it's going to be a disqualification.
He was the nutshot king, wasn't
he? Yeah.
He really was. He's like, listen, slap fighting is cool in Poland, but have you heard of nut slapping? Because I'm the champ. Yeah, so this is quite a weird. This is a big era for the heavyweights, because you still have Evander lurking around. You still have Bo hanging around. You got Mercer hanging around. You got all name the names. They are all terrifying and all destroyers. But Lennox, on his 7th defense, comes up against Hasim the Rock Rahman. And it's in South Africa. It's at altitude. Lennox wasn't listening to a manual because he was with R. Kelly, chilling, doing films, living his best life, all of that stuff, playing chess, doing patois raps, all of the things that Lennox did during his wearing FUBU. Obviously, wearing FUBU was a big part of the day. And he was huge for that fight. Do you remember? Like, he was the most jacked, other than the Vitali fight. Like, he was jacked, altitude, not being acclimatized, not really training that much, and on a different time. It's a terrible combo. And Hasim Rahman stops him.
Capitalized, fucking ended that shit. Big style.
Now, as far as I remember, Hasim Rahman's corner won a fortune on that fight, because it was one of the biggest upsets ever. And Hasim Rahman bought himself a brand new red car and crashed it. Like, that day, it still had Lennox's belts in it or something. It was wild. Surprisingly, Lennox come back and scored one of the most brute knockouts. All right. Never the same again. Right? Yeah. He absolutely nutly ironed him. Lennox.
Last time he'll lose too.
Yeah, for sure. But Lennox comes back. He's now 2-time. He's now the 5th and last 2-time lineal heavyweight champion.
And, I mean, you look at his resume, Tyson, Holyfield, Bruno, Morrison, Mercer, Tua, Klitschko. Like, fucking hell, man.
All of them. Like, literally all of them. So he had a hellacious fight with Vitaly Klitschko. The big Klitschko. the one that if you're in these sort of Russian-Ukrainian negotiations, when they send him in to have the chat,
You're in
like,
trouble.
that's what I want. I want to see that because you know he'll be such a dick with the handshake as well. You know he's just going to envelop yours and just
squeeze.
Yeah, just squeeze. By the way, I did 10 rounds in the rival mitts, the bag mitts, the other mitts. Done less damage to my hand than 16's flies. No big deal. Anyway, sure. So he had this enormous fight. He looks jacked. It's the damage to Vitaly Klitschko's mouth was like it was catastrophic. Like he put his teeth through his lip and he wanted to carry on. His lip was huge. It was just mass. They had to stop the fight. And Lennox saw the damage, knew the damage, and then just kept targeting this giant Kufin uppercut. Retired. Okay. The division then remained for what we got here, 11 years without a lineal champ. No one was really stepping up. And that's a little bit harsh, right? Because Vitaly and Vladimir were both great fighters. Like Lamont Brewster, great fighter. Chris Bird, great fighter.
Yeah.
You know, there was a few of them. James Toney was fucking running it. John Ruiz. Like there was a bunch. Roy Jones was lurking around that time of the year. Like, you know, that time of the year, sure. It was just a semi-dead period. But Vladimir, who has now gone with Emmanuel Stewart, he's bit by bit becoming the Vladimir that we knew, the very strategic, boring is a harsh way of describing him, but just a very classic boxer, puncher, essentially cleans out the division. Right? Yeah. The only one that he doesn't really have is the WBC, which changes hands. Like,
and that chick from Heroes as well. Big star.
Oh, yeah. Hayden Patera.
Yeah, that's it.
It's a lovely couple.
Good lad.
To see him I do. I wasn't talking about you. Anyway. Old Vlad rules that shit to the point where no one cares about heavyweights anymore.
Yeah.
Which is so unfair. Because he's a good fighter. He's got more knockouts than people have career fights, let alone the wins. Like, he is an all-time great heavyweight, an all-time great heavyweight champion.
And not many people are there to watch.
The only time anyone is
televising heavyweight fights at this, I mean,
this is it. It became such a stinker. Like, the only time anyone ever cared about a Vladimir fight was when he fought David Haye. Right, the English cared. No one else did. When he fought AJ at the age of 43, and even then gave all he could possibly give. Like, Vlad's a G.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that I am a fan of Vlad. He is
boring. Fuck
he did his job, and he did his job remarkably well.
Yep.
What's wrong with that? Now, the current lineal heavyweight champion is the Gypsy King, Tyson Luke Fury, to be precise. And he became lineal champion on November 28th, 2015 in Düsseldorf against Vlad. And, like, no one cared.
Yep.
Then no one cared. And that to be fair, you watch that version of Fury that fights Vlad. It is a symphony. It's a phenomenal performance. And they knew all of the tricks that Vlad was going to do. If you listen to
even the ring,
exactly. The ring had 5 inches of padding, right? They're trying to make you box on a mattress, and someone that's a mover like Fury is going to get in there, and he literally just bossed it.
Yeah.
At that point, I'm just not going to fight. Like, this is it. Take it off, or I'm not going to do this. And we're on the day of the fight, and he's left it to the state where it is the day of the fight, and he even says it in his book, right? I left it to the day of the fight and then kicked up a fuss. I already knew they were going to do this with the padding. So they had to do it because it was too late to even do anything other than that. And he put on a show in the sense that post-fight,
he out-Klitschko.
He sung. Oh my God, he out-Klitschko'd. Everything that he did was just to disrupt. And he had done so much to abuse.
And I love his honesty on Rogan when he talks about it. He goes, listen, it's not a good fight to watch.
No.
But did what I had to do.
What do you want him to do at that point? He's He won, and he won a decision against essentially a German long reigning champion in Germany.
In Germany.
And you know, he hurt him at one point. He out grappled him, out moved him, outboxed him. He did everything right. That was the first time that even I was like, you're annoying, but I quite like you now.
Yeah.
And then, listen, he's done 7 defenses to present. I can see him spinning off the WBC. I can see him letting all of the others as a proper fuck you to the division. I can see him letting them fight amongst themselves for the little belts, and then him just defending the lineal one and saying, this is the only one that matters. Also, there's no sanctioning fee at that.
Yeah.
And also, there's no limitation on who I can and can't fight. So, and then he'll spin it.
He's that kind of guy. If there's a guy, it's him.
I think that's what they're doing. I think that's 100% what they're doing. And, you know, for example, this thing with Dillian wouldn't be a thing if the WBC weren't involved. Like, we can say what we want about Tyson. He is, like, again, the sheer size of him and his movement and his skill and his IQ in them. You put him in there with any of these guys.
Yes.
Any of them. And, like, a lot of us, me included, have taken a very long time to warm to him.
100%. I actually saw one of my, you get the reminders of posts from like years ago. And for the first Wilder Fury, it was like, is this really what the heavyweight division has become? And I remember Tyson talking in his book about there's people whose names I don't even know, Deontay Wilder and stuff.
Yeah.
And you fast forward, like Fury took a long time, like you said, for the both of us to grow. But
yeah,
there's no denying once you see it, it's just like,
the thing was that at the beginning, it was just like you could tell he was really good, but you could also tell that he was doing what everyone wanted and wasn't fussed about the entertainment factor. And even as like devout fight fans, every now and again, you're just like, bruv, you are meant to be doing this for fucking money. Like, I've paid for this. Respect, biggest fucking respect. I'm furious right now, but also entertain me. Right. And he's not playing that game, but I think it just takes a little while to get there. I would be very surprised to see him do anything other than
his Del Boy fight.
Walk off and come back is all I can see him doing.
Yeah.
I can see him having say he has a couple of rough fights. Say he fights Dillian. It's a harder fight than what he expects. Then he goes for undisputed, wins undisputed. I could see him just going, osh, leaving for a few years, being very, very vocal, very, very like around the scene, just so everyone remembers. Like Ali when he got his license done. Like I can see him just being around because he's only, what is he, 33, 32?
Yeah, he's young.
This is the annoying thing, isn't it? 32, 33, like he's a young man. Like he can go away for 3 years as long as he continues training, as long as he carries on sparring and fighting, and he's got like a proper groove at the minute. I think it's a long time before we see someone beat him now. I can't. I'm gonna just say it now. I can't see Usyk beating him. I can't see them doing an undisputed fight either. I think there's too much money elsewhere, and I know you want that because you started diving into the comments. You silly Billy.
That one, I want that, especially now that it's like a maybe with Dillian. It's like, what are we doing here? Let's get it done. Let's have another undisputed. Like we said, it's been far too long.
Yep.
And let's make it happen. I don't see anyone beating him. I think he's the champion in recess. Like it's just someone else is just holding on to the back. And Usyk, and like we've said, it's like in the UFC when people were talking about Adesanya fighting Jones. When you have two people that are just incredible, but one is substantially bigger, size doesn't matter, but sometimes size matters. And it's when people are just phenoms. We've got that. Usyk is a phenom.
He really
but
is.
A 6'9" giant that is also a phenom is very hard to. And he, like AJ, for all wants and purposes, whether it was just because Usyk allowed him, didn't let him use his weight or whatever, one way or another, that's not the case with Fury. Fury will use his weight.
I just want to say, it is, 22nd of January, 2022, right? There's that guy that AJ was training out in Dubai with, Chili something, on Instagram.
Yeah.
On his stories today, he's got AJ Usyk on a massive screen, just watching it on about 5 stories with like hashtag studying. So he might be getting the job because McCracken's gone now.
Yeah.
Interesting. As I said, I can see Fury renouncing the other belts and saying, this is how, if you want me to fight these dossers, every single one that's the biggest champion from each one of these belts, I'm going to see it like the 4 leagues, and I'm going to call you the Division 1, your Premier League, the WBC is the European. Like, he'll do it like that, and he'll just basically neg the entire division whilst hyping himself in beautiful ways. Jeez, I think that's us, mate.
We've done it. Lineal. I hope you guys enjoyed the voyage. Like, share, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff.
All of it. Yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.